Welcome to Crowns and Specials, brought to you by DRA Global. DRA is an international mining engineering firm, in fact, one of the world's largest. We have their Director of Process and Origination, Brent Hilscher, joining us, and we are unpacking mining regulations and optimizations. Later in the show, I'm going to have Brent explain how new technology impacts mine economics. Hello, Brent. Welcome to Crowns and Specials. Good
Thanks
to have
for
you.
having me.
Yeah, we're going to cover some important ground.
Definitely, yeah.
We're going to talk about the regulations in mining. And we're going to focus mostly on the Canadian market. We're going to move a little bit global later. But let's start off with, what are the Canadian regulations in the mining industry?
So 43101, it's the regulation that determines what's in scoping studies, feasibilities, pre-feasibilities, everything. What can be made public, press releases. It's very prescriptive. It tells you what to do, how to do it. And it's one of the world's best regulations.
Yeah. So for the novice, it's not a form you fill out. This is a set of regulations outlined by the government that the mines have to follow.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyone designing a mine or putting out any information on mines to be needs to follow these regulations.
Yeah. Or operating mines as well. Is that correct?
Yes, in many cases.
Right.
Yeah.
And so why did the government bring in the 43101 regulations?
So back in 97, there was something called BRIEX, and most of us will still remember that. It was a very big deal for the stock market. And no one wants that to happen again. So to help improve the reputation of Canadian mining companies, give them credibility in the international and domestic markets, the government brought in the 43101, which is very strict. And now we're pretty confident there's never going to be another BRIEX, because companies that have sort of tried things like that got shut down right away. 43101 regulations snapped in, everything got stopped. So it's a very good system.
So a specific event actually led to them designing all these regulations. Now, of course, it's a big industry, and especially in Canada. So when you're looking at it, how effective has it actually been implementing it into the market?
Well, we haven't had another BRIEX, so pretty good.
So there's a success?
And the little scandals we have had been very minor. Nothing that has rocked the stock market. So I'd say they've been extremely effective.
Right. And then, so you look at a company like, again, they're a global company, DRA, but they're heavy in the Canadian market.
Yep.
And so what is sort of their role in this whole process within these regulations?
Right. So we'll do the very first studies, geology heavy studies, and 43101 compliance. So we'll take care of those. Then we'll do pre-feasibility studies, feasibility studies, and that's the main 43101 area. Then we'll move on to detailed design. We do construction management, take care of all of that. And in some cases, we'll even run operations. So yeah, we cover the entire spectrum.
So you're going right from start to maintain the production.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the compliance that regulations that are in place, so you can basically put all all the requirements, you can implement them into the system from day one right up until production.
Exactly.
And then produce because you said something interesting that I didn't quite understand when I was first learning about the 43101. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize it was anything. Is it even press releases and everything?
Yeah, it covers a wide range of things. Anything that can affect a company's stock.
Right.
Press releases, things CEOs say in public can all be considered part of that.
Yeah. So when a company like DRA is then managing that all the way through, obviously that is easier to align everything because they have all that data, all that information right from the ground up.
Yeah.
That's
and we also have mining folks and geologists on staff. So we're not just process people like me. We've got everyone.
Everyone for the different parts.
Sections. Yeah.
Right. So to dig a little bit deeper, how does DRA optimize the 43101, the compliance report? What are they actually doing to optimize that?
So most of the optimization is focused on economics. How do you get the rate of return as high as possible, improve the net present value, things like that. So we'll look at modular construction for big projects. We'll look at plug-and-play modular design for small projects where equipment is brought in on trucks and just plugged in. We'll look at ore sorting in a big way. If you're able to reject half of the ore, which many places are, reject the waste rock. It doesn't have any value. Replace it with rock that does have value. Well, now your revenue is doubled. That's going to take projects from 20% ROI and bump it up to 30%. And then also, of course, there's dense media separation. We have some of the world's leading experts in that, which is very similar to ore sorting.
Right. So these are all the processes that for one, they need to be compliant, but they also comply with delivering. Or
you want to bring in some new ideas whenever possible. They have to be 4301 compliant, so you've got to do the studies and the lab work to back these new ideas up. But you also want to make the project as economic as possible within the regulations.
Right. And so what kind? You touched on it a little bit because you said it goes from 20% to 30%.
As an example, yeah.
As an example, but what kind of impact has, some of this technology like ore sorting,
yeah.
What kind of impact does it actually have on the industry? Like let's do it in a couple stages. 50 years ago compared to now, 10 years ago compared to now, what kind of impact are we actually seeing in a tangible way?
50 years ago, computer technology was 50 years time, so there was only so much you could do with these computers. So a lot of the sensors were looking for things like brightness, dark rocks and light rocks.
Right.
10 years ago, we had already developed X-ray transmission, X-ray fluorescence, and phosphorescence, all the different technologies we have now, electromagnetic and such. And they were starting to get into larger capacities, 50 tons per hour, 100 tons per hour. Some of these machines now are 200 tons per hour. So now we're really at the stage where almost any size mine can put in particle sorting. And bulk sorting, literally any size mine could put that in. Escondida can put that in. And there's no limit on the tonnage for that.
Right. So a company the size of a DRA, they have to be looking at they have to be continually updating themselves on this technology, what's coming in, what fits with any particular mine, because it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
So that's when you get, and I want to zoom out a little bit because we've kind of looked at that. 43101 is a Canadian regulation.
Yes.
But there's a global regulation. There's global regulations that are different in each country. Mm-hmm. So when you zoom out a little bit, what does that look like? I think I saw that DRA has 4,300 employees, or somewhere in there.
We're a big mining engineering company.
Yeah. So it's definitely global by every sense of the word. So what are those regulations? Are they fairly consistent, or do they change a lot throughout the country?
It changes a fair bit. Australia is very similar to ours, very strict regulations. There's quite a few differences, but generally similar. South Africa, also fairly strict, which is good. Some places less so. But yeah, we've got specialists in basically every country who can write reports for any market. So big in Africa, South America, Australia, North America now. And every country you want to be careful that you make sure you comply with their exact regulations.
Well, to dig in a little bit deeper to that though, if you're a Canadian company mining down in South America, how did those regulations work?
So you're Canadian, so you have to, because you're Canadian listed, you're subject to those regulations.
Right.
There may be extra regulations your specific mines are tasked with, but they're probably not market regulated unless you're traded on a second market, in which case you've got to comply with both markets.
Right. So I guess what you just said, just to basically pare it back to it, you're always following your country's regulations, but they may have less regulations, but you're still working with these guidelines.
Because you're traded in Canada.
Yeah. Or you may have more if they are more strict. Is that a global thing as well? Does that count for an Australian company as well? Is it all the same system? An Australian company mining in South America?
I would think so, because it's a stock exchange issue. Yeah. You don't want someone saying they found 1 trillion tons of gold in another country to scam your stock market. So every country makes sure their markets are secure.
Yeah. I want to circle back to a few things you mentioned about DRA offering to optimize the process. You said, I think it was modular, plug and play, I'm going to try to get the next one, and ore sorting. Yes. Yeah. So they're all three of those are sort of areas that DRA is specializing in. Can you sort of break them down by the various streams?
So modular is a very important design philosophy, especially in high-cost markets, where you want to construct blocks as much as possible and then ship them to site so that large portions of your mill can be pre-built, you snap them together. It minimizes construction costs. It also minimizes risk. If you stick build things from scratch, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot more things can go wrong. Plug and play is a little different. Plug and play takes that to the extreme where, if you've got a relatively small process, say you've done ore sorting, now you're down to 50 tons per hour.
Oh.
Now you can look at things like, well, what if I had a couple skid-mounted ball mills and skid-mounted flotation cells and a truck-mounted jaw crusher? You can hook things up with rubber hoses and long power cables. Your commissioning time is extremely short. Your labor is very low, and your chance of having a much longer commissioning time is diminished. It also, of course, saves on capital. It saves on all sorts of things. So that's something we'll look at for the smaller projects, underground operations and things like that.
Right. Would you say like modular now? That's sort of that's just common practice.
Yeah, that's established. Everyone does modular. Plug and play, it's a little newer because the equipment vendors have been working very hard to get their modular
They have to design
portable
all this.
stuff larger and larger. There's been advancements in materials and structural design and things like that. Also, they had to learn that there's a demand. So, before a modular ball mill might do 5 or 10 tons per hour, now it's up in the 30s, depending on your work index. And there's been some changes.
Well, in a Canadian market, and obviously there's lots of other places that have a lot of variables in their terrain. How much is a terrain affecting these modulars, though? Or are you essentially, because you're clearing out an area for them? Do they have to customize each of the ones, or are they starting to be able to build a standardized?
The layout will get customized. And terrain's an interesting one because material moving can be very expensive. So whenever possible, you want to work with the terrain, especially if you have a bit of a hillside. You can use that gravity to your advantage.
Yeah, we saw a picture of flotation. They're way up in the air. And
because you don't want to have pumps between equipment. That's just an extra cost, an extra maintenance, something that can break.
Yeah.
So if you can gravity flow more of your circuit and have split level or 3-level designs in your plant, you can save money on that. You also save money on the cost of leveling everything and putting everything on a single flat area.
Then going into ore sorting, this is, again, it's one of these things, it's fairly commonplace now.
It's getting there, yeah.
But it's not, it's still evolving. Like, I think, what's the maximum? It's not even doing up to maximum capacity.
200 tons per hour, I think, is the largest that's commonly talked about.
So it's up there.
It's way up there.
Yeah.
And all of the bulk sorting technologies, unlimited. So you can do 10, 20,000 tons per hour with bulk. But it won't look at each particle on its own.
Right.
So if you've got a very large open pit, you're probably going to do bulk. If you've got an underground operation, you're probably going to do particle. So they each have their specialty.
Yeah. Where on the low side, I think earlier you said about 20 to 30, but on the high side, what is the actual range where implementing an effective ore sorting and bulk sorting equipment within your processing, how effective can it be, or have you seen it be?
So for bulk, if you can reject 10 or 20% of the rocks without impacting your recovery seriously, that's a win. Because their operating costs are practically nil. It's just a diversion system.
Right.
Particle sorting, it's a little more of an active system. You've got a few more moving parts. The capital's a little higher. So in that case, you want to reject at least 20% of your ore. But we've seen quite a few examples now, over 80% mass rejection.
80% of the product getting rejected.
Yeah, so they tend to be underground, but yeah, you scan all the rocks and sort them according to grade.
Yeah.
And in many cases, 80% of those rocks that were in the scannable size fraction, 80% of those might just be garbage. Not enough metal to make it worth sending to the mill.
Which means if you have a 200-ton plant, now you're still putting 200 tons per day, but it's 100% or 90% of it is actual good product that you're processing, right?
And then you always have the fines bypass. So the fine stuff that comes from the mine, too fine for sorting. So,
right.
But it's also high grade, almost always. I've seen a few operations where it was actually a bit lower, but that's very rare. Usually your fines are high grade, so you send it straight to the mill.
Right, yeah. So you're just eliminating the heavy, bulky...
Yeah, we'll take the larger pebbles and rocks and scan them to see, okay, what's really worth sending to the mill.
Yeah. I want to wrap up with, obviously, we're talking about DRA Global. There's going to be a lot of people watching Canada, some in the U.S. Your operations are in Australia, South Africa,
North America, everywhere. We're
everywhere. Yeah. So where to someone to start to reach out to DRA Global? Where would you start? Website?
Yes, our website. They can call me. I'm not hard to reach. LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn. Yep.
Okay, we'll put all that. We'll put all the information up on towards the end of this, so that you, the viewer, can actually come on and check out DRA Global. Thanks for joining us, Brent. It's good information. I'm sure we could dig even deeper, and hopefully we will soon.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you for watching this edition of Crowns and Specials. We are going to be bringing you a lot more. These are going to be in-depth, talking about technology, services, featuring companies. And they're going to dig deeper than the Crownsman podcast does, because we're centering and focusing on one or two products at a time. If you want your company featured on a Crownsman special, please reach out to us. We'll have all our contact information, and our website is crownsman.com. Thank you, DRA, for bringing us this episode. And thank you, Brent Hilscher, for joining us. We will see you on the next episode.